Good evening, grave robbers, and welcome back to the television graveyard. We're your TV necromancers, Laura Prince and Noah Woolahan. We have come here tonight to... I'm just a simple country podcaster. With me, as always, is TV's Noah Woolahan to the stand.
We're gonna Razzie dazzle you.
Okay, so let me tell you why that metaphor was as belabored as the rest of the ones in this movie. Welcome to Joker, Folie, Deux.
Oh, get ready. I haven't been this excited to record a podcast in so long.
Really?
Yes, because I'm going to just state this now really quick. A little behind the scenes. I always kind of try to come up with like silly little things to say throughout the podcast to either get a laugh or sometimes just to annoy Laura. Also, there are dogs barking outside. If you hear them, I apologize.
Hi, friends! And if you hear me yelling at the dogs to be my friends, I don't apologize.
I wrote a joke on the first page of my notes.
Okay.
And then I thought about it more, and I thought about it more, and I thought about it more. And I was like, wait a minute, this might be a legitimately good interpretation of this film. And then I went online and I did research. And not only that, I have 3 theories about this film that I think very well could be correct that I haven't found anywhere on the internet.
Okay.
So get excited. I have some legit good stuff for this one. So,
okay.
But you gotta stay to the end. So let's talk about Joker, Folie, Deux.
Folie, Deux. We open this one on a cartoon.
Yes, so we get the full Warner Brothers, like, Looney Tunes to start things off.
And it's fun. You're like, oh, we're getting a cartoon. And
what's this?
We get this little short called Me and My Shadow.
Yes, it is a retelling of the events of the first Joker, where Joker, Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, ends up on the Murray Show and dresses in Joker makeup and eventually shoots the host. But in the cartoon, there is the human and then there's the shadow of the Joker.
Yeah, who puts on the Joker makeup and steals Joker's clothes, and he's the one to actually commit the murder.
Yeah, he locks the human in like a cabinet.
Yeah.
And he's the one who does the murder. And we loved this, so we have to talk about it. The police show up, and when the police walk, they go hip 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 hip. You know, like the chameleons from Rocko's Modern Life.
Yes, which we make that joke. There's also all these posters in the background of the hallway during this piece that are classic musicals.
Yes.
Which is such a nice touch. Mm-hmm. This is really fun.
Yeah. The way that this ends is the police grab Arthur and they beat him with billy clubs. So blood splatters onto the screen. The red blood becomes a red curtain. And the curtains open up like it is a beginning of a Broadway musical. And I yelled out loud, "This is going to be bad now?"
Yeah, at this point...
I was like, what a hot start.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I'm on the hype train. I'm like, okay, like, let him cook. I thought this was going to be a lot more of this tone. Mm-hmm. Don't get attached to this tone, gentle listener.
Certainly do not. So, we find Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, in his solitary confinement cell. Mm-hmm. And the cells are all being opened so that they can dump their chamber pots.
Yeah, it's like their day. It's that point in the morning in prison where you are no longer strictly confined to your cell.
Yes.
I mean, you're still in prison, but, like, you can go into the yard or go into wherever.
And the two interesting things I want to say here is the cops very deliberately say, let's get the show on the road right after the curtains open.
Yeah.
And they start, the prisoners or the cops, I think it's the cops, start singing When the Saints Go Marching In.
Let's go, get up. Let's go, boys. Let's get this show on the road.
Yes.
Which I think is a very interesting musical choice.
It's an under theme for the entire film.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix is so thin in this movie.
Yes.
He's very difficult.
I wrote Joaquin Phoenix scary shoulder bones.
Yeah. I mean, I have he is too thin. And he is having a big day.
Yes.
Because he is going to be meeting with his lawyer and social worker.
Yes. And throughout this, like, beginning procession, he doesn't speak. He's silent. And the cops keep asking him, hey, Arthur, you got a joke for us today?
Hey, Fleck, you got a joke for us today?
And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. But one of the cops has a joke.
Yeah.
It's about a man who goes to a Catholic church and asks for a funeral for his dog. And the priest says, we don't do dogs. And the man says, I'll pay you $2,000. And the priest says, why didn't you tell me the dog was Catholic? Gets a big laugh. It took me a minute to get the joke.
Oh.
But I was like, oh, he just wants the money. All right, so we start with the church being corrupt.
And, like, the cops are this, like, very, this kind of stereotype of the Irish-American cop. And
Yes.
they talk about Moran getting bitten by a new inmate who only smiles.
Okay.
And I want to bring that up because we're going to see that inmate a few times.
Yes, we are. Good catch. I didn't catch that. The
title card shows up and it's this horrible neon yellow that all I could think is if you saw it in the theater, it would hurt.
Yeah, because it's so bright. Joker, Folie, Deux.
He is led through the rain in one of the first every frame a painting shots.
Yes.
In this film. And when he looks up, because they don't give him any kind of umbrella.
Yes, but all the cops have umbrellas while he's walking through the rain.
But they're all brightly colored umbrellas. So it actually creates a very pretty effect.
Yes. It should also be noted, they're only colorful when he's looking up.
Yeah,
in the shot when he's walking towards us, they're black.
Well, the insides of them are black and the tops are colored.
Oh. I took it as only when he's looking up it is colorful.
Oh, I thought they were just... Because we see the umbrellas of the time, so they don't change.
Okay, I thought they were black, but okay.
It just makes a nice shot. And he is led to the minimum security wing, and as they are walking to go visit his lawyer, he sees the music class.
Yes.
And sees a young woman singing who wanders out into the hall.
Yes.
And does a shoot herself in the head gesture. To get his attention.
Did you write down what song they were singing?
Are they saying, like, come on, get happy?
Not yet.
Oh.
Because this is a song that I have a very special relationship, so it made the hairs on my neck stand up. It's Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Which is famously a song from BioShock Infinite.
Okay.
Will the circle be unbroken by and by and by and by? And in BioShock Infinite, it represents this kind of ascending into the sky, because that's where BioShock takes place.
Yeah.
And also this idea of there being a time loop that cannot be escaped, that there's a cycle. And I think that song may be chosen for the same reasons here. The idea of this cycle and things always coming back around.
Okay.
I'll push on that a little bit more. Also, though, before he meets with the lawyer, they shave him.
Yes, this is before they even do the umbrella bit.
And it's just a detail I want you as a listener to remember is that When they shave him, they ask him for a joke. He doesn't give it one, and they cut him. So he does this thing where he has like blood on his mouth. So there's red by the corners of his mouth, which I thought was pretty good. And then he meets with his lawyer, who's the mom from Get Out.
Yeah, Catherine Keener.
Catherine Keener, who's great.
And she is really compassionate, and she's kind of annoyed with the cops.
Yes.
For not giving him an umbrella. Because he comes in kind of looking like a drowned rat.
Yes.
Even though he actually, when we see him, seemed to enjoy being out in the elements for a little bit. Probably because he doesn't get to be. But she's kind of indignant in his behalf, and it's this very good way of establishing that she does care about him in her way.
Yes. And she's establishing basically what will be the main debate of the film. Is we are going to trial. We need to prove that Arthur Fleck is a good man. And the Joker is a different person that lives inside of you. That you didn't do these crimes. The Joker did. And Arthur Fleck's a good man. Be relaxed, be cool, can you do that? And Arthur unhelpfully just goes, "Can I get a cigarette?"
But for me to do my job, I need you to be candid with me. Does that make sense?
Can I have a cigarette?
She's worried because she needs him to be declared incompetent. But she comes at it as like, I want you to be in a real hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks him some really leading questions about the events of the first film. Really trying, like, did you see lights? Did you see, like, really trying to push him into the quote-quote right answers.
Yes.
And I found this really interesting. Because to me, this felt a little bit like Harleen Quinzel comics.
Mm-hmm.
About, like, the psychiatrist front to it. Even though Keener's his lawyer, not his psychologist.
Yeah.
I don't have her name, I just have her as Keener. And she then asks him if she can speak to the Joker. And then that's the end of the scene. Mm-hmm. And it's very abrupt. We watched it on streaming, and I don't pay for the ad-free tier.
Yes.
And it was very strange, because this had an ad, and then it didn't go back to the scene. I just was like, oh, I guess this is the end of the scene.
Yeah, the scene was very abruptly ending. Light does kind of come up when he asks that, like the storm ends and the sun comes up, which is a bit interesting. This started the beginning of kind of a theory that I notice is, well, the first thing he does is he asks for a cigarette, and he's smoking this cigarette throughout the entire scene. And this is kind of like this long interview. And as much as he's smoking the cigarette, he never ashes it.
Huh.
So the ash just keeps getting longer and longer. But, like, the cherry never breaks off. And after that moment, there's a lot of smoking in this movie. Like, a bunch of smoking. And the whole time, anytime someone smoked, I was like, do they ever ash it? And they never do.
Huh.
So I don't know if that was meant to be like the shadow of the cigarette being something you can't get rid of. But it's something I picked up on. I was like, that seems intentional.
Huh. I did not notice that. So, we hear "Oh, when the Saints Go Marching In" again.
Yes.
Which we tend to hear whenever Fleck is back in the prison.
Yes.
And a prisoner who, I'm not sure at this point if the prisoner is mocking him or if the prisoner is also mentally unwell.
Mm-hmm.
Because he asks Fleck for a kiss in a way, and has been put up to it by the cops.
Yeah.
In a way that I cannot figure out at this point in the film, is he being put up to it by the cops to mock Fleck? Or is he being put up to it because he doesn't have the capacity to understand what they're asking him? And it quickly seems to be the latter, because, like, Fleck kisses him on the mouth.
Yeah.
And then when he goes away, Fleck kind of just goes up and transactionally collects a cigarette.
Yes, this is a very important scene. Is he kind of walks over to the cops, and throughout, like, the early part of this, the prisoners and the cops have this very interesting relationship. Like, it's almost like the relationship an owner has with a dog.
Okay.
Where it's just like, they're buddy-buddy, but the cops own him. Like, there's nothing, like, that the prisoner could do without the cops, like, consent and stuff like that.
Right.
But, like, they're all very chummy. And this interaction is kind of like them laughing like, ha, we got that guy to kiss you. He then says, can I have a cigarette?
Yeah.
And the cops respond,
Have a cigarette? Why not?
I don't know. What are you doing? He doesn't get a cigarette unless he tells a joke. No, come on. He still makes us laugh, doesn't he?
you can't get a cigarette unless you give us a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else then goes, come on, he did the kiss. Just give him a cigarette. So it's kind of like, give him a treat.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, come on. He doesn't know how to, like...
He was the butt of a joke just now.
Yeah, like, he did it. Let him have it.
Mm-hmm.
And Arthur seems to be kind of aware that is how that can work for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't really have to advocate to get the cigarette. He just kind of like, can I have a cigarette? And they argue a little bit amongst themselves and he gets one.
And he gets a cigarette, yes.
And one of the cops that we've seen earlier has gotten him into the music class in minimum security that we've seen because Fleck has been a model prisoner.
Yes. And the cop's also, like, kind of doing it because he wants to go to the music class.
Yeah, because he has, like, designs on, singing and...
Yeah. So he's just like, oh, okay, cool. This is a thing we can do. Arthur is taken to this class. He remains handcuffed the whole time.
Yes.
But he is just kind of, like, in this class, and they tell him, like, feel free to sing when ready.
And he is standing next to a woman called Lee.
Yes. Lee Quinzel.
And the cop is singing, and during this sequence where the cop is distracted and singing with the music instructor, Fleck and Lee have a conversation out in the hallway.
Yes.
What's a nice guy like you doing in a place like this? I killed 5 people, one live on national television. Which is what I'm going to say next time somebody asks me that in a bar.
One live on national television.
And then he immediately confesses to that 6th murder.
Yes. Because he also killed his mother.
Yes.
That's a quick point that I want to just really quick bring up. I have seen the original Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Laura has not.
No.
So that's kind of different experiences we have going on.
I did research it and I know what happens and I know the finer points.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't sit down and watch the movie. And I actually did watch several scenes of it online.
Yes.
I just haven't watched the whole thing front to back because I, to be honest, was not terribly interested in it.
Yes. I've seen the original Joker and thought it was fine.
Yeah, I think if you had recommended it a little more highly, it's just not a genre of movie I'm typically enthusiastic about.
I enjoyed the time I spent with it, but I wasn't, like, over the moon with it. Like, I didn't regret sitting down to watch it. I thought it was fine. This is where they start singing, Come On, Get Happy. Which is funny. Because Joker.
They talk about, like, some things. They grew up in the same neighborhood. She had a bad childhood. She tells Fleck they made made a TV movie about him a couple of years ago, and she'd watched it 30 times. And she says that her mother had her committed against her will.
Yes. Because she set fire to her parents' house.
Yeah. So she's an arsonist.
Yes. The cop is clearly in the background watching all this, just again showing, like, the freedom that Arthur has, because he's now left the room that the cop is in to discuss something with this, woman.
And in the very next scene, he cracks a joke for a cigarette. This is the first time we see him intentionally trade the joke for the cigarette.
Yes.
And when he gets it, he pats the cop on the back in a really friendly way. And the cop slaps him hard in the head.
Yes, like, too far now.
Yeah, like, no, we are not friends.
Because he actually says, like, thanks, pal.
Yeah.
Do you have the joke?
I do not.
It's something like...
You want to know what I regret most from being on the Murray Franklin show?
What's that?
That I didn't shoot first and let him ask me questions later.
That a joke, Arthur?
He makes kind of a joke about police brutality. And the cop laughs and gives him a cigarette. I should also note that I believe this is where they also first bring up the fact that there was a made-for-TV movie about the events of the first movie that exists within Gotham.
Yes.
And Joker is very concerned if the TV movie is good.
Yeah, because the entertainer.
Yeah.
And we now meet the Assistant District Attorney of Gotham. Guess who it is, kiddies?
Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent.
Yeah, it's Harvey Dent, so we're getting kind of that other big canon character. Because I know the first Joker is littered with these moments where we see characters who will become major canon characters.
Yes.
I think this is the only person we really see that's not a core lead in the film.
Yeah. Like, we don't see any of the Waynes. There's Wayne Towers in the background of one scene, but, like, we don't see any of the Waynes, and we don't see, like, Pamela Isley or anything like that.
No, this movie is very small.
It is a very small film.
There are not a lot of... And by that I mean, like, almost play-like, in that there are not a lot of characters.
Yes. But this scene here, I think, is very important to establish the rules of this film.
Okay.
Harvey Dent is basically saying, like, Arthur is a monster who needs to be put to death.
Yeah.
And as he's staring at it, he's thinking about Harley.
Yeah.
And he's staring at the news, and then someone's like, "What are you thinking?" And he starts to break into song and sing "Someone That Loves Me," I think.
Yeah, For Once in My Life.
Yeah, I have someone that loves me. But they do this great thing.
Yes.
Where he's staring at the TV, and then once the music starts, the camera cuts, and the TV is no longer showing the news.
Right.
The TV is showing Looney Tunes. Now,
This, friend, is when I also want to bring up the concept of diegetic versus non-diegetic songs.
go for it.
Diegetic songs in a musical or in any piece of media are songs the characters can hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, for an example, for Baby Driver. Baby can hear anything through his headphones, even if we can hear it too.
Yeah.
That music exists within the confines of the moment. Don't Stop Me Now, to use another Edgar Wright example.
Yes, that's
in
a
Shaun
great
of the
example.
Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Don't Stop Me Now is playing in the room.
Yeah.
Now, when the characters cannot hear a song, for example, in the 2001 classic Shrek cannot hear Hallelujah by Rufus Wainwright.
Right.
But in Shrek 2, everyone at the castle can hear Holding Out for a Hero.
Right.
That is non-diegetic versus diegetic
Yes.
music. And that distinction is really important here.
Yes. Because this is very distinctly non-diegetic. Because he sings this whole song, and when the song ends, he almost like jump cuts back into the slot where he's staring at the TV, and the news is back on.
And the prisoners, just in case you miss it, go, "We asked you a question, Arthur."
Yeah. Thought that was cool.
Yeah, and I found it very interesting because I also noticed the quality of the singing here. Joaquin Phoenix can sing. He was Johnny Cash in Walk the Line and did his own singing. His voice is very weak at this point. He doesn't sing this song super well, especially to start.
Yeah.
And it gets a little stronger over time, but isn't great.
There are a few moments where I think there is diegetic singing.
Yes.
And that is always terrible.
Yes.
Which I think is a really good choice.
It's very interesting because I did read something where Lady Gaga did talk about having to essentially relearn how to sing and sound like a normal girl.
Yeah. Because she sings Come On Get Happy pretty poorly.
Because we hear her sing in both styles.
Yes.
In the film. And Arthur at this point is definitely doing that more. He sounds more like we would expect the character to sound.
Yes.
And while this happens, we see a young man grinning in the corner creepily.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a jump cut to Arthur crouching in the rain, laugh crying.
Yes.
Like doing his, the laughter that is a tick of his mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And also crying because he's been declared competent. He will have to stand trial. He will not be found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Yeah.
So now he's like kind of going through that grief of realizing he is going to be a problem. He is going to have a problem.
Yeah. So he's like dealing with the fact that he is going to actually face consequences for his actions. And he is... We have this really weird scene where one of the prison guards is reading a book about the events that took place on the Murray Show. I found out through research that the book is written by Mark Maron's character from the first one, who's like a PA on set.
That's fun.
Which is like fun, yeah. Like there's a Mark Maron cameo in that you can see like his picture as the author on the inside sleeve.
And they ask, somebody asks Arthur to sign a copy of this book.
Like, I'm reading this book, can you sign it? And as he's signing it, they start making fun of him. So he starts writing, put on a happy face, crosses it out, and writes, I hope you get cancer.
And then a straight line face.
And then, commercial.
Yes.
And at this point, I look at Laura and I'm like, I can't believe this movie's going to be bad at this point. Because everything they've set up is so good right now. But this movie needs to get moving. Because I feel like we're still just kind of stuck in the beginning. This movie needs to, like, start.
So, the next thing we see is the inmates, including Fleck and including Lee, are watching a musical. And there's kind of like almost cute middle school-y. Lee wants to hold hands but doesn't know like whether it's cool or not.
Yeah.
Then she says they should get out of here and Fleck's like, they'll shoot me.
Yeah.
Which is, I do like those moments where Fleck is super pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that moment of like, no, that's a bad idea.
So, Lee is going to take matters in her own hand as That's Entertainment is playing from the movie. Lee just casually lights the piano on fire.
But Arthur is like riveted watching the movie The Bandwagon.
Yeah.
Like, Arthur's like into the film.
Yeah, he's really excited for this.
And nobody really notices the fire until it gets huge.
Yes.
And then they have to evacuate and everyone panics. Except Lee and Fleck kiss in the projection light in a shot I know you all saw in the trailer.
Yeah, it's a good shot to have them, like, bathed in the light of the projector while they kiss.
I mean, there's some legitimately beautiful shots in this film.
They then, like, make a run for it to, like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And, like, they're hiding behind stuff as, like, cops are running by, and, like, they're outside. Like, they get outside, and they start singing, If You
They
Can
Could
See Me Now. Oh, yeah.
And this is two things. This is diegetic. They are, because we later hear them, like, you were singing and dancing. So, this is happening.
Okay.
And it's also astonishingly well choreographed as a number of, like, when they're hiding between cars, when they kiss. Like, there's a lot of really good organic looking choreography in this sequence.
Yes. Like, they get to the fence.
Yeah.
Like, they're up on the fence, and there's, like, photographers there.
Yeah, like, they waltz as the fire trucks and ambulances go by. He lets the cops drag him away, because they start to climb the fence, and they're both pulled down by the cops. She fights, and he just laughs as the cops drag him down the hall.
Yes.
And he gets thrown in solitary.
Yes, they throw him down some steps, because steps are always, like, symbolic in the Joker movies. And he's going to spend 2 weeks in solitary confinement. He has a bit of a hallucination about stuff. I forget what the hallucination is.
This is another big piece from the trailer.
Yeah.
It is the moonlight
It is
rooftop waltz by the Hotel Arkham. It is a classic looking moment.
Mm-hmm.
He is in a tuxedo and full Joker makeup, mind you.
Yep.
And, like, one of the first things is he kisses her, and for the rest of the number, she has some of the red makeup all over her mouth.
Yeah, giving her the Harley look.
And they waltz, and it's romantic.
Yes.
And so he's dreaming of her the entire time.
Yes. And there's the idea that Arkham's not an asylum, it's a hotel, which is nice because, like, the inmates are always coming and going.
Yeah.
And I have to say it. What are they really doing? What is Harley really doing? She is, of course, dancing with the devil
in the pale moonlight.
So I was like, okay, I get it. This is cool. This is a lot of cool stuff. Like, some plot would be nice, but you're doing a lot of cool things.
So then he wakes up to Harley being in his solitary cell.
Yes.
And he immediately asks, like, are you real? And she is. So we have this moment of them being alone together. And she says, one of the guards got me in. We don't have a lot of time. I'm getting sent home because you're a bad influence on me. Because that's how jail works.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to find out the truth about Harley later, but it is very suspicious.
And then we have this little scene, and she introduces a leitmotif that we see for the rest of the film of, we're gonna build a mountain.
Yes.
He kisses her, and then she starts to put on, like, a very rudimentary form of his Joker makeup.
Yes.
And asks him to stop taking his medication.
Yes, it's very important that Harley says, I want to see the real you, and then puts the Joker makeup on him.
Yeah.
She says that we should stop taking our meds, and then they have bad sex.
Yeah, it is an uncomfortable, fumbling, realistically awkward sex scene. Mm-hmm. Especially for someone who we could probably infer has not had sex before.
Yeah.
I actually have the following two notes of, this wins the prize for worst sex scene to watch with your parents.
Yeah.
And he lasts just long enough for me to type that joke.
Yeah. Condolences to Watchmen, which recently lost the worst sex scene in a comic book movie to Joker, Folie. Arthur's now feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
So when he sees his lawyer, he kisses her. And at this point, I'm like, okay, kissing means something.
Yeah, like based on the first film, Arthur will conflate relationships with women he's not. Mm-hmm. And the lawyer is someone who has extended care to him.
Yeah.
And she's still really compassionate toward him, even with, like, she doesn't rebuff him in a way that is unkind. She kind of is like, we can't do that, and remains professional, but still very kind about it, considering he low-key assaulted her.
And what's basically about to go down is a not Maury Povich, who's the guy that did The Vault? Geraldo Rivera type interview. Where, basically this hard-hitting journalist scored an interview with this very famous murderer. And he's basically going to try to set him off.
Yeah.
And his lawyer understands that and is like going over the plan of, you need to show that Arthur's a good person, Joker's a bad person that lives inside of you. I don't think you should smoke. I think it makes you look too relaxed. And he agrees. And then they go into this interview. And this interviewer keeps trying to set him off. And Arthur's kind of doing a good job. And then he kind of like makes a joke and starts like singing. Mm-hmm. And then when he does this, he reaches over and steals the interviewer's cigarette. Yeah.
He sings Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered.
Yes.
And this is being televised. Because this is such a, like, 80s movie staple. And this movie takes place in 1985. Mm-hmm. Of Lee walking down the street and passing a TV store.
Yes.
Where all the TVs are showing him play, or showing him singing to her. And he looks down the lens and sings, and Lee realizes he is singing to her.
Yes. But it's also reinforcing this idea of, I've done a joke or I've done something entertaining, I get a cigarette.
Yeah.
And you as the viewer should probably be like, wait, she set the prison on fire. Why is she out on the streets? That is the correct response to seeing that. That's coming. The explanation to that is coming.
So, and then Lee breaks the plate glass window and steals a portable TV to bring him with her.
Yes.
And then we finally get to the courtroom.
Yes. Which I think, okay, finally we're at the courtroom. This is going to become a movie soon.
Yes.
We're not going to just do a bunch of cool stuff. We're going to tell a story. I'm kind of wrong.
So, I think it is interesting to be watching this and covering this now instead of right after it was released. Mm-hmm. Because there is something very interesting about looking at this trial in a post-Luigi world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
We open and the light from the courtroom looks like a spotlight. And I have a note here. This cinematographer was cooking with gas while everyone else in this movie is microwaving a burrito.
Oh, yeah.
The cinematographer in this movie...
killing it.
Like, there's so many beautiful shots in this film. So, Fleck enters the courtroom to the kind of applause I fully expect when Luigi goes on trial.
Yes.
And he kind of does the Richard Nixon, I am not a crook.
Yeah, he does like the 2-finger thing.
Yeah, he does the peace sign, I am not a crook.
I am not a crook.
And they call in the jury. The judge asks Fleck if he's ready and if he's okay. And Fleck responds, "Yes, Your Majesty." Which is this very fun little, he's starting to, move into that showman place.
That's something I wanted to ask you. Do you think that was a joke, or do you think he legitimately messed up and said Your Majesty instead of Your Honor?
Oh, I think it was a joke.
Okay.
I don't know if... I think this is him starting to pivot into the showman. We don't see him get there yet, but we have to see flecks of it.
Yeah.
Before he really embraces it. Because he thinks he is performing for Lee until he realizes he doesn't see her in the crowd.
Yes.
She sings the song Make 'Em Laugh. This feels diegetic.
Okay.
This feels like she is singing to herself. Because she's not singing very well. As she goes into the courtroom, she waits outside, she smokes a cigarette, then she dances in while a psychologist is giving expert testimony. So she makes an entrance.
Yeah.
Because in her mind, she is the leading lady of the play, and she gets an entrance, just like he does.
Yes. Also, shouts out to the costumer who has, given her very subtle diamond stockings.
Yes, because the costume design in this movie is quite good.
Oh, yeah.
And we see, again, that evolution until, we later see her in a much more Harley-esque look.
Yeah, but right now it's just a splash of it, which was very nice.
The social worker then reads Fleck's diaries and tries to, prove he's competent through reading his diaries.
Yes. There's a line in here that I wish... I meant to actually go back and make sure I got this correctly. But the diaries are also his notebooks for when he was a stand-up in the previous movie.
Yeah.
And Arthur interrupts at one point and says, "They're jokes. They're not meant to be read out loud." Which, is such an interesting thing to say for your comedy notebook.
I mean, I guess maybe it's that element of they weren't, final draft jokes yet. Oh.
I just think it's interesting to just kind of be that kind of, it would have made sense if he said it's my diary, it's not meant to be read out loud. But he says jokes, which I thought was just interesting. We also get, after this whole shenanigans, which I want to say, the courtroom seems really long and I get really bored.
Yes.
Does your page have doodles? Because I have doodles.
No, I use Google Drive.
And, I looked up and Joker was also bored and doodling. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm experiencing this perfectly.
But there is a moment where they go on recess.
Yes.
And the lawyer essentially takes Fleck aside and very gently tells him that everything Lee told him was a lie.
Yes, this is the big reveal. It's oh yeah, she's just a spoiled rich kid who checked herself into Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, she committed herself.
Yeah, because she was bored. She has a psychology degree.
She went to graduate school for psychiatry.
Yeah.
So she's an advanced degree in psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
And that she doesn't live in their neighborhood. Her father's not dead.
Yeah.
Her father's a doctor. She's wealthy. And then we get this interesting scene which is where we get one of these Joker fantasy sequences. And they're doing a variety show that feels very Sonny and Cher.
Absolutely, it's Sonny and Cher.
And he's back in the formal Joker wear. And he is singing well.
Yes.
And she is singing like Gaga and not like a random girl.
Yeah.
They are performing. So This is non-diegetic, and again, Joaquin Phoenix can sing. And in this sequence, he is very much singing.
Yeah. This is an important scene. I would say this is the second most important scene.
Yeah.
Because the things that I notice in this is in the set of this, because it looks like they're on a TV stage, doing the variety show. On the back, it says Joker and Harley in big letters. And I remember seeing that and being huh, weird choice not naming the movie that. Like, why isn't it just called Joker and Harley? That seems easier to sell.
Especially considering they changed the name of the film Birds of Prey.
Yes!
To Harley Quinn Birds of Prey.
Yes, very
Instead
true.
of Birds of Prey, The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Yes. Remember that, listener, because I'll bring that up later. And the other thing is, they're singing.
And then he stops.
And says, like...
Well, you weren't even looking at me anymore. You were making it all about yourself. And the song is about loving me.
And they have this little bit of banter where she's like, yeah, but, you know, we're here for them. Let's give the people what they want.
Yes.
And then she has a gun and she shoots him in the midsection.
But I want to lean real quick on the fact that she says, we got to give the people what they want. And Joker then responds, let's give the people what they want. And then she shoots him, which is, at that moment, baffling.
It's not, though, because she has dealt him a blow in his mind by lying to him.
Okay, all right.
So he is feeling betrayed by someone he considered his partner.
Okay.
And starting to feel like her motivation for lying was to be a key piece of this trial. Like, he's starting to kind of have that moment of, like, am I being exploited? So I actually thought it was not baffling at all.
Okay, that does make more sense.
So we get back out of the fantasy sequence, and I notice he's Angie smoking.
Yes.
He's back in the prison yard, and he and the nervous boy who asked him for a kiss are sitting on the bleachers where the cops usually sit. And the cops are mad that they're sitting there.
Yeah, it's like, hey, that's our spot. Very much of, like, get off the couch. Like, kind of go back to this, like, weird dog metaphor I'm making. Like that's where people sit. Get off of that. And also the kid is now, like, being defiant.
Yeah.
And the cops are like, what got into you? Like, you're usually such a good prisoner.
Ricky, you're such a good boy. Stop this.
They eventually get up and move. And then I believe this is when Harley visits.
Yes. And then he asks if she lied. And she admits that she just wanted her to like him. But not about the TV movie. The TV movie was really good. She only lied about unimportant things like her entire backstory.
Yes. I love this shot.
Yeah.
It's not the shot you're thinking of, but I love the shot where Arthur goes, did you lie to me? And it cuts to her, or to Lee, looking back at him. And this is the only scene that I remember where you can see the roots of her hair.
Oh, I noticed it through the whole movie.
Well, it's just it's so prominent that this time. She's like, did you lie to me? And she's sitting there with fake blonde hair going, no.
I mean, I will say the lighting is very stark in this sequence because the lighting is very realistic. Like, this isn't pretty prison lighting. Like, it is that yellow-green fluorescent lighting. And we have these... We establish the following couple of things. She has moved into his old apartment to build them a home. And he's upset because he doesn't want to go back there. He doesn't want to go back to those memories. And then as she takes a long drag of a cigarette, she tells him she's pregnant.
Yes. So it goes from, like, did you lie to me? Her going, yes, about everything but the movie. And then going, by the way, I'm really pregnant. And he believes her. And
then she sings Close to You by the Carpenters.
Yes.
And there's some really good work with the glass that's between them.
Yes, I love this shot.
Because there is a point where the camera is on him and she's reflected.
Yeah.
And he is singing back up to her. Mm-hmm. It's not, again, not the shot from the trailer that you're thinking. It's this shot of, like, her being reflected.
Yes.
So he says he doesn't want to go back to the old apartment building he lives in, and then the next person we see is his neighbor from the first movie.
Yes. So, one, I just really want to say real quick, because this is where I realize it, that in this universe, singing represents insanity. Like, when they're singing, they're insane. Because after this song, there is a brief moment where he's in, like, his holding cell, and he's just kind of, like, dancing. And I was like, oh, he's basically infected with the madness of this woman again, because he believes that she's pregnant when she's not. Then we get this scene with the neighbor from the first movie, which I believe is the most important moment in this film.
Okay.
Is this scene. And this is where I went down my YouTube hole and I was watching reviews and analysis and things you missed videos. Most videos do not even talk about this scene. Okay. Which blew my mind. Because when the neighbor walked in, I was like, oh, she's alive.
Yes, because it was heavily speculated he murdered her.
Yeah, a big talking point of the first one is kind of this idea. You find out that he's imagining this relationship he has with the neighbor.
Yes.
And he's imagining it, and he's imagining it, and he's imagining it, and then he eventually breaks into her apartment because he's so used to thinking he's in a relationship with her. And she's just like, you've never been in here, how dare you?
Yeah.
And then there's a moment where it implies that he might kill her. And then it cuts, and then we never see her again.
Yeah.
So, like, it was, in my opinion, very much left open to interpretation on purpose whether or not she's alive. And then when she just walked in, I was like, oh, we're doing this. Oh, okay. So she walks in and drops the big line that one of the horrible things she had to deal with was that someone terrible played her in the terrible movie.
I had to be a character in that awful TV movie they made. And then when she says that, Fleck turns around and looks at Lee.
Yeah, and Lee's like, nah, it's good, don't worry. So at this point, briefly, just because I was asked specifically to bring this up, is the idea that this is a meta sequel.
Okay.
A la Fight Club 2.
Okay.
Where in Fight Club 2, which is, I always mess up his last name, Chuck Palahniuk.
Palahniuk, yeah.
Yeah. In Fight Club 2, he's yelling at people like, you're idiots, Tyler's a monster.
Yeah.
Stop worshiping him. You didn't understand any of this. So this is kind of implying with this whole, like, the story of the first Joker is bad, that the thing really on trial here is the first movie.
Yes. I could definitely see that. Or specifically the way the first movie was received.
Yes.
Like the fandom surrounding the first movie. Because there was a lot of dialogue when the first movie was released about male violence and whether this film glamorized male violence or whether it created more of a tragic figure. There was a lot of discourse about Fleck and about the movie as a whole. Yeah.
Because I remember when I went in to watch the first one, going in there with that mindset of like, oh, is this going to, incite violence or glamorize violence? And when I left, it was absolutely not. It does not do that. But I could see how somebody who wants that to be the case could see that.
Yeah.
So, the idea of this being a meta sequel that is putting the first one on trial is an interesting idea. Overall, not really sure if that's the intention, but it's definitely worth thinking about.
I think it absolutely is the intention because of how strange this movie is.
Okay.
And how genre bending and how choices seem to be made to specifically spite the fan base of the first movie. In a way, I generally don't believe creators are trying to spite their fan base, but I could kind of buy that the director of Joker 2 is I could buy that Todd Phillips is spiting his audience here.
Like, there's part of me that while I was watching this was wondering, is this Beetlejuice 2? Not Beetlejuice. Is this Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian? Is this him being like, oh, you really think I should make a sequel to Joker? That was a complete standalone film. All right, I'm going to light it on fire then.
I would watch Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian.
Yeah, we talked about doing that as an episode, but we'd have to read it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd read it, because I did also read an unproduced script for the Rocky Horror sequel.
Oh, Shock Treatment?
No, that was produced.
Okay.
Revenge of the Old Queen.
Okay.
It's been quite a long time since I read it. I feel like I would need to reread it to speak intelligently on it.
Okay.
But I did read that when I was probably too young to read it. So much of my life is I was probably too young for that.
Yeah.
So, the neighbor admits that she should have called the police the night of that scene and complied with the subpoena out of guilt when she realized he had killed other people and that she feels like those people would have been alive had she called the police the night he threatened her.
Yes. And Arthur nods. Like, yeah. And then this very interesting thing happens where she mentions a made-up story his mother told her.
What was the story? That he was put on this earth to bring joy. Something like that. That's why she called him Happy.
And?
And she couldn't believe that he'd based his whole life around this made-up story.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Arthur being like, I don't know what this is about. Like, you see a concerned look run across his face. And she explains that his mother made up a story that he had a purpose. And his purpose was to bring joy to people. This is why Arthur always wanted to be a clown and worked in, like, show business or kind of performing in the first movie. Because his mom lied to him and said that that's who he was and that was his greater purpose. And this is kind of a moment that brings him to a snapping point.
Mm-hmm.
And he fires his lawyer.
Yes.
And decides he's going to represent himself.
And
to uproarious applause.
He kisses her, pushes his hair back, and they call for a recess.
Yes.
Lee bursts in and they make out through the bars as a cop goes, I don't touch him.
No touching.
And then he smokes into his pregnant girlfriend's mouth. And smoking was discouraged in pregnant women well before 1985.
It's a good thing she's clearly not pregnant.
Yeah, but like, he's still smoking into her mouth. He thinks she's pregnant. Don't smoke in her mouth.
Yeah. Smoking is the symbol of reward for performing.
Yeah. So, when Fleck gets back to prison for the night, he gets up on a table and they all start singing When the Saints Go Marching In. And this is diegetic. This is happening.
Yeah, this is happening.
And it's the funniest jail unrest ever until the police brutality starts.
Yes. For some reason, everyone gets attacked but Arthur. Arthur kind of stands out of all of this as all the other inmates get beaten.
So, the next day at the trial, he's fully permitted to dress as the Joker, and we see another character from the previous movie brought to the stand.
Yes, this is Gary Puddles. Gary is the little person that Arthur used to work with when he was doing, like, birthday parties and stuff.
We do get this sequence where Arthur is neither the Joker nor Fleck for a moment, when he just cannot believe that is his real name.
That his name is Gary Puddles.
That's not your legal name. It is. No.
So they do this thing where, like, they try to say that this isn't funny. Like, Gary, like, yes, Gary's a little person, but we're not, like, this. It's not a laughing matter. And then they make sure to show you that he's sitting on a phone book. So there is this level of, like, ridiculousness that keeps being shown here. And, like, the judge keeps saying things like, I'm not going to let you turn my courtroom into a circus to a man dressed as a clown.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting because Gary points out that Fleck never made fun of his height. And even now, Fleck is still not making fun of his height. He's making fun of the fact that his last name is Puddles.
Yeah, so basically, Harvey Dent does, like, the usual, did you see the man that committed these murders? Can you point him out? Like, lawyer stuff. And when Arthur gets to cross-examine, he puts on a, like, southern drawl.
He becomes a simple country lawyer.
And just like, is your last name really Puddles?
Gary Puddles? Tell me, sir, is that your God-given name?
Yes.
Really? Really? Your last name is Puddles?
And he just keeps saying that.
And then he talks poorly about the fat, stupid guards at Arkham. That's very important.
Yes, he does.
He speaks very ill of the guards at Arkham.
Yeah.
But he does that, like, it reminds me of the make some noise bit of A Complicated Country Lawyer.
Yes. So after these, like, he makes all these points, there is, like, a dream sequence of Arthur killing everybody with a hammer.
Yes.
Or with the gavel, which is very cartoony. But...
And surprisingly not gory.
Yeah, it's very cartoony.
Yeah, like, it's played... I'm just explaining for the listeners. It's very much played like a bloodless cartoon. It's less bloody than the actual cartoon.
Yes.
At the top of the movie.
Yes, very true. And they ask Harvey if he has any more witnesses, and he says, no, I think we have made our point clear that it was not... that there's no multiple personality, that Arthur Fleck is who he is, and the prosecution rests. And the judge says, okay, Mr. Fleck, you can now defend yourself. And he also rests.
But we definitely get one more musical number before Fleck goes back to prison.
Yeah, we after this we do, after he rests, because it gets adjourned for, like, final statements.
Yeah.
We get another, like, on-stage musical number, and it's a reprise of We're Gonna Build a Mountain.
This time it's a wedding.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting because the bridesmaids are essentially the three urchins from Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
So I thought that was a good pull. It's a big production member with a full band. His best man is Gary.
Is Gary Puddles. And this is probably, like, the biggest musical number. Like, Gaga is, like, dual pianos. Like, she has two pianos singing, I'm gonna build a mountain, we're gonna build a mountain. Arthur tap dances.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this is cool.
And at this point, I realized this movie is a less successful version of Chicago. Because I'm at this moment thinking of, ladies and gentlemen, a tap dance.
Yes.
Which is a sequence in which the work Billy Flynn is doing is compared to a tap dance. And his talking circles around the jury and the prosecution are depicted in simultaneously with him tap dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me very strongly of that sequence. And that's when I realized that Chicago does a lot of the same things this movie does more successfully.
Well, I also think this may be on purpose. Because the first film, was just a retelling of The Greatest Show on Earth, I want to say it was called.
Okay.
Where it was basically, it actually starred Robert De Niro, who goes on to like a late night talk show and kills the host.
Huh.
So the idea that this is just another movie, that this is like a retelling of Chicago, is probably on purpose. It's just not as good as Chicago.
Yeah, it really heavily reminded me of Chicago at this point. And then Joker returns, and as Joker is driving back, or being driven back to prison, did you catch what song was playing?
No.
Dancing in the Moonlight.
Oh, yes, Dancing in the Moonlight. Everybody. Yeah, in the pale moonlight.
And in case you were excited about this movie finally getting fun...
So, the prison guards, very insulted that they've been called fat, do horrible things to Arthur. It's like, it's not shown, but it's very much implied that they assault him in more than one way.
That he is physically beaten and sexually assaulted.
Yes. But there's like a weird joke at the beginning.
Well, up until he is assaulted, he's feeling pretty good.
Mm-hmm. But and like it's probably the best crafted joke out of all the whole movie. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing. I'll try to put it here if I can. But it's.
Let me tell you what I used to do about my mother.
You can drop the act now, because we know it's only Arthur in there, okay?
And she only dated abusive guys.
Yeah, is that right?
And I asked her, I said, Mom, why do you stay with your abusive boyfriend? And she said, beats the hell out of me!
And like, that to me is very Joker. Is very just like, I'm taking a beating and I don't care, ha 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 ha. But they then demolish him. And he's a broken man as he's taken back to his cell. And then the young inmate who kissed him earlier says something smart. And
he starts singing "Oh, When the Saints Go Marching In"
yes,
as rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And then they open his cell, start beating him.
Yes.
And then we hear one of the guards start to panic.
Yeah, and say, oh, he's gone.
He said, well, he tries to stop the guard who's clearly the main aggressor.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to stop the guard, like, he can't breathe, stop.
Yeah. And so they just kill this kid.
Yeah, who does not seem like he was ever, like, fully in possession of his mental faculties.
Exactly.
So, it's another very tropey moment of killing a potentially mentally disabled person.
Yeah.
To further the storyline of someone who is comparatively sane. And then it cuts to Lee singing "I've Got the World on a String."
Yes.
And she is now doing the essential, like, final... the final look, the Harley Quinn look.
Yeah, she's going full red and diamonds. And she's basically fully become Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Whew. The end of this movie, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to do my best to get through this.
She comes to the trial through the protesters in full Harley Quinn cosplay.
Yes.
And Arthur delivers his closing statements.
The way this is shot is so good.
Mm-hmm.
To give his closing statements, he grabs the microphone and like takes like a comedian. Like he looks like Dennis Leary about to do like a set. And the judge says, "You are not on stage. This is a courtroom." And when he says that, the shot is capturing the camera in the room
and he's
filming it.
And he's looking down the lens.
And he's looking down the lens, and he's just kind of like, I absolutely am on stage right now. And he says, there is no Joker.
Yeah.
It's just me. So after all of this, like, he's just kind of comes to terms with the fact that this defense that there's another person inside of him is a lie. And he wanted it to be. He tried to be the Joker and do the silly, your name is Puddles thing, but it didn't work. And now he has no defense for the indefensible things he's done. And he just says, there's no Joker, there's just me.
And everyone leaves, including Lee.
Yeah.
And Dent looks smug.
Mm-hmm.
So they go on a temporary recess to let the jury deliberate.
Yes.
And Fleck desperately calls Lee, begging her to return.
Yes.
And then we get a shot of Lee listening to the voicemail and raising a real gun to her head.
Yeah.
Not like the finger guns like we've seen before.
One important note I have to say is this voicemail that he leaves. Arthur starts to sing.
Yeah.
And he leaves a singing message on the machine. I don't have what the song was. It might have been Come On Get Happy reprised. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But then there's this interesting wide shot of him on the phone alone in a hallway. Like where he's real small, so it really shows his loneliness.
Yeah.
But you can also see what the prison guard is watching on television. And it's Looney Tunes.
And it's the same Pepe Le Pew cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And Pepe Le Pew is someone who is a character who is perennially trying to seduce an uninterested.
Well, since you brought it up, it's not just that Pepe Le Pew is trying to pursue someone who's uninterested. Because a lot of people have been seeing this and picked up on the Pepe Le Pew. Anytime it's Looney Tunes, anytime I said cartoon, it was Pepe Le Pew. And this idea that Arthur is Pepe Le Pew going after Harley Quinn. And Harley Quinn's not actually interested. I disagree with that. Mm-hmm. Because the heart of Pepe Le Pew is Pepe Le Pew thinks he's in love with a cat, but he thinks the cat's a skunk because of white paint.
Ooh.
Pepe Le Pew is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is the one
who is in love with another character because of white paint.
Yeah, who's not what they think. It's the white paint that makes it wrong. And you know what Pepe Le Pew super rhymes with? Folie à Deux. Maybe it's a pun. Maybe it's Joker and Pepe Le Pew. And maybe Harley Quinn's name really is in the title. It's just hidden as a joke. Theory number one. Arthur
coming back. And I have a note here. His makeup is all roughed up, and I'm like, man, the continuity person must have had a bad time.
Yeah, this has got to be hard.
And they're about to they're reading off the verdict. Mm-hmm. He is found guilty, and Arthur, as he does, begins to laugh.
Yeah.
And someone's father, we don't know, I think it's one of the Wayne Enterprises businessmen he kills on the train.
Yeah.
I think it's one of their fathers. Is a man we see grieving a few times and is furious. That man lunges at him. And then a bomb goes off.
And then a bomb goes off. It blows Arthur across the room. And he bounces into the jury stand. And now he's filthy. He's covered in soot. He looks over, Harvey Dent's unconscious, and he's also covered in soot, but really it's only half of his face. It's weird. Half of his face is messed up.
Yeah.
But the other half is fine.
Yeah, it's odd.
It's a weird look for Harvey Dent.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know how if you see a coin?
Yeah.
How there's two sides of it? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that.
It's like he has multiple faces.
Yeah, like two.
Two to be
Like
more
he has two
specific. He has
faces.
two faces in that moment.
Okay, I think we've beaten that. I think we've beaten that bit to death.
Not as much as the film.
Arthur stirs and is dirty, but fine.
Yes.
Outside of his hearing is messed up for a little bit.
Yeah, he is that like. Laura brings up like he was really close to that explosion to be fine.
When no one else seems to be fine.
Yeah, when like people are dead and then, like people are missing and things like that. I think that is a very Joker thing. One of my absolute favorite Batman comics is called Lovers and Madmen, and it is yet another Joker origin story. And a major component of this comic is before he becomes the Joker, he's a scumbag criminal.
Yeah.
Who's kind of trying to get caught because he's bored. Like, he could have gotten out of a place, like, undetective, but he starts firing his gun just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And there's a great moment where, when he, like, falls into the chemicals, he's drowning. And his, like, last thoughts as he's drowning is, like, this is good. I'm done. Like, people are free of my terror. This is what should happen to me. And as he's having that thought, something opens up and like the vat empties so he can breathe. And he's like, oh my God, I survived when I really should have died. What a joke. Now everyone has to deal with me. And to me, that is so Joker that like his thing is like, things should have killed him by now. And they just don't. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the joke of it. So the fact that he's fine called back to those comics to me.
Yeah, it's so weird that it had to have been intentional because you could have set off the bomb from anywhere.
Right.
It just seemed odd that it would come in right behind him. Maybe the cinematographer like used his phone call. Like cinematographer's like, I need this shot. Like, look at what I've done for you.
I mean, this next sequence great because it's one shot after this.
Yeah, it's a very long oneer and very good.
Arthur...
Oh my no, Dent's badly burned on one side of his face. You don't goddamn say. I do want to point out that the level of the burn Harvey Dent has is definitely closer to 2004's Phantom of the Opera Gerard Butler. He's badly sunburned on one side to arms. Than the truly gruesome 2008 Nolan.
Like, I almost think he's fine, and that's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Like, if they were to make a third one of these with Harvey Dent, he would not be Two-Face. He would just be like, yeah, that's a thing that happened.
Yeah, like, it doesn't look like how Eckhart was, like, annihilated.
No. Arthur runs out of the hole blown into the courtroom, and he runs into someone cosplaying as the Joker.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, it's you. You're out. Come on, let's go. And they, like, throw him in a taxi cab. And they, like, drive away. And, like, he's, like, all the cop cars are flying past it. And they're like, oh my God, we're doing it. We're getting away. We're saving the Joker. It's all for you, man. Arthur's like, ooh, I don't want this. And he, like, jumps out of the car. And he's running. And the shadow of the Joker is chasing him. And as he's running, he gets across like a street, they just get hit by a car.
Yeah.
All of this, one shot.
And a well done shot.
Yeah.
And so they're in, and Fleck's hearing comes back as the song My Life by Billy Joel. I never said I was a victim of circumstance.
Yeah. Like, so much, like, cool stuff is happening. And he ends up running to the steps. The steps from the first movie, where he finds Harley.
He finds Lee, who is alive and has a great new haircut.
Yes.
It has been debated that this scene does not happen.
That it's not really her.
And she regards him very coldly. And tells him all we had was the fantasy and you gave up.
Mm-hmm.
And she says goodbye.
Yeah, and she walks up the steps, ascending,
Mm-hmm.
and at the bottom of the steps, there's a bunch of police cars to arrest Arthur.
because of the change in her hair, there were some people who did not believe this scene took place. The director has confirmed that this does happen.
My feeling about Harley as a character throughout this, at this moment, is I don't actually think, stay with me, I don't actually think Harley's lying to him about anything. I think Harley's playing house. Harley's playing make-believe.
Yeah.
It's not so much of I'm lying or I'm delusional. It's her playing this idea of we both know that you will either be put to death or locked in an insane asylum for the rest of your life. Like, if you win this court case, you don't go free.
No.
When you win, it's just like you are not guilty by reason of insanity. You must be locked in a mental institution forever. Because you are a danger to everyone. You're just not a criminal. So this idea of like, I'm pregnant, we're going to have a kid. I have this place for us to live. That's Harley playing pretend. And when he stops the fantasy and it's just like, yeah, I'm just Arthur, the game is over. And Harley kind of feels betrayed. Because her feeling towards this whole situation was, yeah, I know, but we're not saying it out loud because we only have these moments.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting take on the character.
All we had was the fantasy. Like, if she is a spoiled, wealthy child who wants adventure, this is like her bad boy phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get to the, like, viewing room.
Yeah, there's like an abrupt cut to him in the viewing room.
A lot of the cuts in this movie are really abrupt.
This one feels especially abrupt.
And the Pepe Le Pew cartoons are back.
Yes, he's watching Pepe Le Pew.
And there's this little moment where the cop who murdered his friend walks past Fleck and tips his hat and winks.
Yeah.
And then Fleck is told he has a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the young man who's been smiling malevolently in the background ask if he can tell Fleck a joke.
Yes.
A psychopath walks into a bar and sees this famous clown sitting there, all alone. Totally drunk. It's pathetic. I can't believe you're here, he says. What a disappointment. I used to watch you on TV. What can I get you? And this clown turns and says, well, if you're mine, you can get me anything. Perfect, the psychopath says. How about I get you what you fucking deserve?
And then he stabs him.
And then he stabs him
And then he stabs him. And I kind of dug this moment because it's the same joke from the first film before he kills Murray.
How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash!
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get!
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve!
But for some reason, the joke actually functions as a joke in the second one. In the first one, it doesn't make sense. Like, as a joke, it's just like, eh. In this one, like, structurally, it works better.
Yeah.
Mostly because in this one, the victim is actually asking for it. And, like, there's like a layer of it of, like, you could have just said a soda. And then this wouldn't have happened. So I'm like, that's pretty good. What a good ending. Nothing can ruin this. So then what happens, Laura?
So the kid stabs him a bunch. He flashes back to when Lee shoots him. I have a note, hey, in performances, her roots don't show. And then he starts singing again, but it's bad, even though it's non-diegetic this time. And The man rocks between his feet as Fleck finally falls to the ground, bleeding out to the sound of his murderer's laughter, and then whimpers of pain as the murderer carves a smile into his own face.
No!
As Gaga sings That's Life.
Oh, why would you do that at the end of your movie? That's how he got those scars? How dare you? How dare you give us that explanation for how he got those scars? I hate that happened.
Yeah, the end of this movie is drawn out and fairly weak.
That was just, it was so on the nose, and I hated that happened. I do like the idea of Joker being kind of this sickness that kind of floats around. Mm-hmm. So kind of the idea of the circle, can the circle be unbroken, and stuff like that. And it's also the thing that they do in Fox's Gotham, where, like, they had a character that was not the Joker, but clearly was the Joker, and then he would die, and then someone else would come out and also kind of be the Joker.
Yeah.
And this idea of, like, the Joker kind of being this omnipresent force, this symbiote. And I really like the idea of madness being singing. Mm-hmm. Because a song can get stuck in your head. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. I also have two other, like, big theories I want to give you.
Okay.
But do you want me to give them to you now, or do you have anything you want to add before I dive into these?
Dive into those.
Okay. So I think that there's a possibility that people completely do not understand this film. And this is the idea that I honestly think is the point of the movie.
Okay.
Okay? When the explosion happens, he is covered in this dark soot.
Yeah.
He then runs out and he sees someone dressed as the Joker. In this moment, there kind of are two Jokers.
Yeah.
The cartoon we see in the beginning, me and my shadow.
Oh, because the shadow when he's covered in...
Yeah. I think people are misinterpreting, like, oh, look, it's Arthur again running away as the shadow of the Joker is, like, right there that he can't escape. And I even said it earlier in the podcast. I don't think that's what this is saying. I think what this is saying is Arthur Fleck is the shadow. Arthur Fleck is the monster. He's the bad person. He says it into a microphone. There is no Joker, there's just me. I am Arthur Fleck. Arthur Fleck is the person who killed Murray on his TV show on live television. The Joker is is this good thing.
Okay.
That he's trying to create. The Joker is supposed to be a clown.
An entertainer.
An entertainer. A good thing. But it's not real. It's a story his mother made up.
Ooh.
Arthur Fleck is the shadow, the darkness. The Joker is the light, the good, and not real.
Huh.
So when we see that cartoon of the shadow locking the Joker up in the cabinet, that's Arthur Fleck locking up the only good thing, the good character that was created by his mom, and being himself.
And the whole film kind of hinges on people trying to convince him that's not the case.
Yes. The whole film, the crux of the film is every person doesn't understand that. They want this psychopath, Joker, anti-authority, but that doesn't exist. Only monster Arthur Fleck and failed comic Joker. And failed comic Joker's not real. I think that's the message of the film. And I watched video after video after video of Arthur Fleck runs out of the courtroom and faces his shadow. I'm like, no! Then why is he covered in soot? He is, in fact, the shadow. That is what I truly believe is the intent of this film.
Okay.
I do have another theory for you.
Yeah?
One of the things that I liked about the first Joker is, like what the Joker says in The Killing Joke, I want my backstory to be multiple choice. You can view the Joker in many, or you can view Joker in many ways. You can view it as like this story of a mentally ill person, falling through the cracks and all this stuff. You could also view it as a lie that Arthur Fleck says while arrested. That this whole thing is a lie.
Okay.
Like, none of that movie happens. And
none of the first movie.
Yes. And amazingly, you could do the same thing with this movie. I think there's a good case to be made that the entire film is his life flashing before his eyes as he dies. But because he's insane, it's also delusion.
Like, there isn't a true life?
I think...
I actually have a completely different theory, but I won't let you finish.
Okay. Here are the real moments in this movie. Arthur Fleck in prison.
Mm-hmm.
The prison guard says, let's get the show on the road, which means the show is not started yet.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Fleck is then taken. He doesn't speak. That's very important that he does not speak.
Because the dialogue has not yet started.
Yes. He does not speak, and they shave him. They put white shaving cream all over his face to make his face white. They then cut him on the side of his mouth, the exact place he starts bleeding from while he's dying on the ground. And this is, to me, is the crux of this. The first words Arthur says are to his lawyer. And they are, can I have a cigarette? He only gets a cigarette when he's performing a joke. The whole film is that joke. The name of this film, Joker, Folie Deux. What is Folie Deux?
Folie Deux is madness for... the literal translation is madness for two. Mm-hmm. And it is essentially when more than one person shares a delusion.
Yes.
For example, in the play Bug.
Yes.
When the main couple...
Perfect example.
When the main couple truly believes that there are bugs in the motel room.
Yeah.
They believe that together.
Mm-hmm.
That is a folie à deux.
So, I think if you know that going into this, you're like, oh, it's referring to the shared delusion between Joker and Harley. But what if it's not? What if it's the shared delusion between Joker and us?
Okay.
As we share in this fantasy that he is presenting to us. And this is the clue to me that you're not going to believe that started this snowball rolling downhill for me.
Okay.
The start of the film is him emptying his chamber pot, right?
Because it's full of shit.
No, it's not.
It's full of piss.
It's full of piss. He dumps out his chamber pot twice. Mm-hmm. There's never any solids in it because he's full of shit. He is Joker, full of a doo-doo.
I hate you. You're so proud of yourself.
I knew you were going to hate that, but I was like, wait, this could be it. This could be it.
It's not.
I love the idea of that being the intended interpretation of this. And he's like, I'm going to make this movie and it's a poop joke and no one's going to realize it.
My theory is it is the seduction of Harley Quinn. It is the story Joker tells his psychiatrist, Harley Quinn. Dr. Harleen Quinzel.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
This is how... Because in most of the traditional versions of Joker and Harley, she starts off meeting him while he is in Arkham, and she is his psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
And he generally seduces her during their sessions.
Okay.
And that this story could be something he uses to pull at her and convince her to fall in love with him.
Okay. I like that a lot, too.
Yeah, and it's not a poop joke.
It's not a poop joke, which is good. The other just small thing I want to say about the title is I think it's very purposeful that the name of the two movies are Joker and Joker Folie Deux, not The Joker and The Joker Folie Deux, because he is not the Joker. He's Joker. One of many. He's a Joker. Which I think is a great little detail. That being said, this movie is bad. And I feel like I knew that this was going to be an issue because it's a really fun conversation. But it's not a good movie. Like, I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you and with the audience about this film. The problem is, to get to have this conversation, you have to watch Joker. Yeah. And it's not great. I'm going to compare this to a film that I love and Laura hates, and I'm wrong and Laura's right.
I love that phrase a lot.
Yeah. And that movie is called Rubber.
I hate Rubber.
I know you do. Rubber is the film about a murderous tire. And Laura and I sat down to watch it together. We got maybe 15 minutes in, and Laura was like, "This is stupid and we're done." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I watched it on my own, and I loved it. But Laura's right. The point of that movie is that it's bad. And it breeds a very nice conversation about film and about art and the relationship with the audience to a piece of art. But the correct response to Rubber is to turn it off. And I didn't do that, and I love it, but I should have because it's bad. And there's this feeling that I have with Joker of like, if you've seen Joker Folie Deux, that's exciting for me. Because I'd love to sit and talk to you about it. But I would never recommend anyone sit down and watch this movie. Listening to this podcast is the correct way to absorb that film. And also maybe have it on in the background at a party so you can see the shots.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a movie I'd put on at a party.
When I say put it on at a party, I mean not you're all getting together to watch it. I mean, like, you're at a party and the TV's on. Put that on, there's some good shots. Like, it's muted and you're in a conversation.
You know,
There's one scene that we wouldn't watch, yes, I understand.
There's, 3 scenes. I guess you'd have to stop it before the last half hour.
Yeah.
This movie was very controversial when it came out. I think the issue is this movie has a lot of really cool ideas and doesn't execute them all together well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because the original Joker was so successful, Todd Phillips kind of had that, auteur license where he was permitted to do the movie however he liked.
Okay.
And I think that hurt the movie. Because I think there maybe needed to be another editor in the room.
My feeling when this movie ended was we've talked about a lot of cool stuff in this movie. If they had gone over the script one more time and been like, you know what, this kind of drags, and this kind of doesn't make sense, and this is unclear, and we should speed this up, they probably could have come back with a pretty good movie. But, like, it's not there. Like, that being said, like, I see the joke, of wanting to vote for Joaquin Phoenix for Worst Actor. Because it'll be the first time ever that the winner of Worst Actor had won Best Actor for the same role. And that is a delicious piece of, like, trivia and pop culture to have take place. But he doesn't deserve it. He's great in this movie. He does a really good job with what he has.
Yeah, I think this movie explores a lot of themes that other movies explore better.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chicago explores the relationship between musicality, courtroom performance, and celebrity in a much more cohesive way.
Mm-hmm.
And a big controversy when this film came out is how many very cool parts of the trailer do not appear.
Yeah!
Like, there's a very cool shot in the trailer of Joker and Harley dancing on the courtroom steps together for the protesters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a shot that never happens. And I think we also don't see Lee in the Harley Quinn costume as much.
Yeah.
And there's sort of this feeling, there was a shot filmed of Gaga singing on the Joker stairs.
Oh, really?
Implying that she either sang in the shot where he got arrested, or we did see her perhaps getting the apartment. And, like, I think we lose a lot of those moments.
Yeah.
A lot of this courthouse dancing, especially because in the courthouse moment, this was clearly a cut dream sequence. Because they're dressed up, they're doing a choreographed dance together, and Lee is visibly pregnant in these shots.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just feels like... It feels like maybe there were things that were changed heavily between filming and the final release.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the movie drags. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, this can't be 2.5 hours. This is already far too long. So it's a stay doomed from me.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yes, I think there's parts of it that are really interesting and they're trying to do interesting things. It just falls short of making it in a way that makes the film incredibly frustrating. It also has a big piece of who is this for?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really satisfy fans of the original Joker. Because it kind of feels like it's intentionally trying to teach them a lesson. It doesn't really work for people who didn't like aspects of the original Joker because it doesn't lean hard enough. I think there should have been a period where Joker was out of prison.
Yeah.
For some reason. I think the highs between Joker and Harley needed to be real. And, because I know she says all we have is the fantasy. But there should have been moments where that fantasy seemed very close to real life. Like, in the end, it would have been all predicated on fantasy and lies. But, like, they should have done a Gypsy Rose style press tour. Like, he gets out and then they're doing... Do you know Gypsy Rose?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Like that, they should be doing that kind of press.
I think it would have been good to
I think it would have been really interesting to see them show up on a talk show.
Right.
Like, there would have been some really interesting things you could have seen there.
I think a Somewhere That's Green-esque musical number, where it's like, this is like...
What life would have looked like.
What life would have looked like would have been welcome in this. I think it's important that he never actually gets close to it, because the whole point is that it's a fantasy. But having the, like, we'll have a 3-bedroom house is would have been a nice little beat to have. But then again, making this longer is not the best plan. When it comes to voting in the Razzies, I would put this as worse than Madam Web. But I don't think it's even sniffing near Worst Picture, in my book. Because, like, I liked Madam Web, and I know that that's a silly thing to say. I didn't like Joker Folie Deux, but if I ran into someone who said, that's my favorite movie, I wouldn't think that was weird. I'd be like, oh, you got it? Okay. It's not for me, but I get it.
Yeah, to me, this movie was so frustrating because it almost did a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's so close. It's just frustrating.
I think I enjoyed this more than Madam Web in that I thought about it more and it stayed with me a little bit more. Madam Web really should have been a tight 90.
Yeah.
Like, it should have been a Pete Davidson short-ass movie, a really short movie.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, the pacing was simultaneously slow and too fast, and I found it kind of interesting. So I enjoyed this movie more because it tried.
Yeah.
Like, this movie tried. It just didn't quite make it.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a great review. And I think that puts a bow on this. Thank you so much for joining us here for Joker Fool of a Doo-Doo. And let me know what you thought of this movie. I think, more than any other thing we've ever really covered on Stay Doomed, there's a good chance that people have seen this and have their own opinions. And I'd love to hear what you thought. What do you think happened in this movie? Do you think any of my theories are accurate or not? Love to hear it. But we gotta continue on with Razzie Month.
Razzie Month.
What are we watching next week?
Let me check. Which is when exactly? I will check. I think it's going to be about time to tackle a movie that I assumed was going to be longer than it is. Because I just looked up where it was on streaming, and I'm not gonna lie. I assumed this movie was not the same runtime as Joker.
I thought it was a 3-hour film, is it not?
No, Megalopolis is the exact same runtime as Joker.
All right.
So we will be watching Megalopolis.
Well, Platinum, let's go. I'm very excited. But until then, where can people find us?
You can email us at thestaydoomedshow@gmail.com or on Blue Sky at Stay Doomed.
And if you think that there is hidden poop jokes in this film, you can talk to me. I'm at TV's Noah on Blue Sky and Instagram.
If you wish that you didn't have to follow up your sign-off with a poop joke, I'm at Laura Crane on Blue Sky and Glitter and Glow Tape on Instagram. Until next time, stay doomed.